the only counter to that I will say is, like, for instance, the information is heavily using OpenAI right now and GPT stuff for some very cool projects. And the interesting differentiation there is actually developer experience and ease of use, right now, right? Which is like, it's kind of annoying to use some of these other things. You have to talk to humans, like things like that. And GPT is OpenAI is the only company that kind of Twilio style, you really can just like click with really basic APIs and get
What kind of
stuff.
an AI company are you if you have to talk to humans?
Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right?
Hello. Hi, guys. We're supposed to focus now. The podcast has started.
Hey, Jess.
Hi, guys.
The fifth wheel is here. Was that a good jingle?
Okay. Well, hello to all our listeners, viewers out there. Welcome to this week's episode of More or Less. And yes, Sam and Britt spilled the beans. We have a fifth wheel. You may recall from last week, we thought that we were going to have a substitute, but good news for all you snow bums out there. There is already snow high up in the mountains of Jackson Hole, which killed Sam's trip, but means we have the quintet. Is that what we have here?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't sing, though.
We don't sing.
Some of us
do,
welcome,
obviously. Scott Belsky. So, Dave,
you could have just invited me. It's okay, you know.
No, it's okay. But this is, I think, for our fifth wheel intro, and man, we have so much to cover this week, guys. It's been a crazy week. Each person has to say one fun fact about Scott Belsky. And for all of you listeners out there, you should know that his day job is very important, very big. Scott is the Chief Strategy Officer for Adobe and also runs their emerging tech. So he's got a legitimate bona fides for being on this podcast. And now you're all going to hear why he's really on this podcast.
And thank God he has that second part of the title, because we all know that Chief Strategy Officer is a fake job.
Bingo.
Sam already trying to scare off the fifth wheel.
Okay, already scaring off our fifth wheel. Yeah. So Sam, that was you. Britt, what does the listenership need to know about Scott?
I think you should know that Scott looks really good in a cardigan. He tends to dress in skinny jeans, cardigans. He's very
not sure
East
if
Coast
I should be worried
chic.
about that.
He makes Dave feel really insecure about his fashion style. And I think it's net positive for Dave because he should be insecure because it's time for Dave's fashion to evolve and we're working on it.
Oh, man. Here we go.
Okay, man, something to look forward to. He is not wearing a cardigan, folks, I got to say. Or a plaid shirt, which is sort of how I picture Scott, constantly in gingham. Anyway, Dave, over to you.
Well, Scott is my personal PR man because he always uses one of my favorite quotes in his presentations, which is the devil in the defaults. And then my inbox gets filled up with people talking about the wonderful presentation that Scott
that's
gave.
also the FTC's favorite for catchphrase.
Especially this week.
Scott, did the FTC get that from you?
Am I allowed to speak before I'm introduced?
No,
yeah,
we never had
you
a fifth wheel, and we should just turn fifth wheel into roasts. This is awesome.
You're never going to have a fifth wheel again after this. No one's going to want to be in this role.
Oh, yeah. I also love that we're at FTC and we're like 60 seconds into this thing. It's going to be a good pod. So, okay. So then it's my turn. I'm pulling up the illustrious profile of Scott Belsky that recently ran in the information. And I got to say, it's got great art. It's got great art. It's like a sprinkling light thing. Headlined, "Can Adobe Catch the AI Bug?" So among the many things Scott has done at Adobe is really bring the company into the AI era and at least attempt to buy Figma for $20 billion, which is pending regulatory approval. But that's very exciting. So everyone should read this profile to learn more about why Scott knows way more about AI than pretty much all of us, which means it's a very good...
Speak for yourself.
I don't know about that.
Oh my God.
It's a team effort over here. Just apart.
If there's one way to irk my husband, it is
Sam tries really hard to know the least about AI.
He would like to.
Sam's also my intern, by the way. So,
He doesn't like my camera shot here. So now we will. There we go.
You got to pull back a bit, Jess. You're entitled to those.
I was just reading the internet so that I could appropriately quote this article. But okay, so what is happening in tech right now? So we have Meta Connect. You guys, we could go into a history of Facebook developer conferences, but I don't think that would be the most exciting thing to do on this pod. Although, Dave, I think we met at F8. I think you and I met at F8.
Yep.
But Dave, you're not in the second row. What's going on, man?
I don't know. I started that conference and I don't even get invited to it anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, that actually shows that Meta does not have its VIP act together, I would say, ding compared to Apple. But so Meta is unveiling products we basically already know about, but the AR glasses infused with AI chatbots of Kim Kardashian. I'm not sure why we need this, but we can talk about it. At the same time, there's been a lot of news this week. There's been news of OpenAI raising money at a $90 billion tender valuation. Myself and my amazing colleagues at The Information broke a story recently that Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, and Johnny Ive, the former Apple designer of the iPhone, have been deep in conversations about building a hardware device together that kind of is suited for the AI age. So lots of AI on the brain. Where should we start? Should we start with Meta and any kind of flash reactions to what we've kind of seen today?
Well, and what about Amazon? Are we talking about that?
Yes, and we will obviously talk about probably the most boring, but maybe the most important topic. But the government has finally sued Amazon. And I say finally, not because I think Amazon should necessarily be sued, but because these lawsuits leak over
come on.
years.
This is the only viable monopoly case that there is.
Then we have to debate this one. Do
I get to wax poetic about how all this AI stuff continues to only benefit incumbents with Spotify's announcements?
Yes. Okay, so let's start there. So we have all these AI announcements. I'm going to go to Sam, then I'm going to go to Scott. So be ready, Scott, for what these last few announcements have told us about the state of play. Okay, Sam, over to you.
Easy. It's Spotify releases, very cool, transcribe any podcast into any language so you can have a global audience for your podcast. Great use of AI. Obviously, Spotify's releasing that. That just dashed the hopes of about 50 startups that were all doing some form of this, but they have the distribution, they have the podcast. It's an easy bolt-on. And so, as I said, AI is super cool. AI is going to make a lot of big companies a lot more money. And I will say, since Scott's here and then he can take it away, every time I get pitched, we are Adobe for AI. I like saying Adobe is Adobe for AI, and they are. So that's kind of my hot take, but it is one of those things. It's not a new hot take, but it will continue to just be. I like seeing it show up on Tech Meme over and over and over because this is the world's most obvious theme.
At least they're quoting your Threads account on Tech Meme now.
Fair enough.
Oh my God! But Sam, would you include what's happening at Meta as part of this, or too early?
Absolutely. Character AI, sayonara. It's not like. These are cool ideas, but the reality is you have the data, you have the distribution. AI is an easy tack on for platforms. This is not disruptive. It's just extending what they can already do.
Okay. What's the Belsky view?
Well, first of all, I think about all the big waves that have driven the startup world over the years. What have they been? They've been web, they've been mobile, go to the cloud. A lot of these waves caught incumbent large companies that operate in those spaces somewhat off guard, and then they realized, oh my gosh, that is the future, and then they embarked on multi-year replatforming efforts and reimagination efforts that totally slowed them down. And these startups had an opportunity to launch the first mobile this or web this or cloud this, and that's how these industries were all transformed. And I think that with AI, I think the D squared here, the data and the distribution point that Sam was making, my goodness, if you can just surface some of these superpowers in the workflows that customers have so that tomorrow when they log in, suddenly they have it, then they don't have to necessarily go to an entirely new place and go through the friction of doing so, I think that that's a reason why the game is a bit different here. Ironically, though, the thing that I'm most excited about with AI is kind of giving the small the advantages of the big. I mean, I also think SMBs are going to have the greatest, future,
Totally.
Right? Because they're going to suddenly you have all these small companies that operate at the, they're going to be able to Sam's point, like take something and totally transcribe it in seconds to every region, and suddenly, shift. A content creator can be in like 140 languages by midnight, and it's like, whoa, that is a super empowering thing that AI does for the small guy.
Yeah, so I won't dominate, but I just want to point out that the way I've been thinking about this is a big U, right? It's like AI is hugely beneficial if you're tiny, enormously, right? Just as cloud is, like going from heavy metal, hard metal, big server racks, iron to the cloud. It's like massively empowering to be a small business. It's never going to be it's never been a better time to, as a solo entrepreneur, launch on $50,000 a business and make $4 million in your first year. Crushing it. Huge opportunity there, which seed funds might be able to help with. Not big funds, but seed funds. Huge for the Adobes, the Microsofts, the Spotifys of the world, the dominant players. The middle, per usual, gets fucked, right? Like you do not want to be.
Who's the example of the middle? Is the middle like a company that has launched in the past 2 years to do AI for marketing or AI for? Is that the middle? Like,
I mean, my view is anyone whose business ends in .ai or who's taking loads of venture funding, right, to build, the next generation money losing go for scale startup attacking an incumbent with AI as a differentiator. Those are the losers. Those are not going to survive.
But Sam, just to take a step back, I think that you're right on data and distribution, Scott. I like the D squared term too. But like, what if you only have one of the two? What if you have data but no distribution, or distribution but no data? Is that then an open opportunity for a startup to exist?
There are always exceptions. Usually data and distribution go hand in hand. Like it's kind of hard to have one without the other. I'm sure there are.
I think that she's right. And we've seen this where there are proprietary data sets that are powerful for creation of these AI related tools, but that don't necessarily have distribution in the channel that they're going to use the data set in.
What's an example?
ProShift.
Yeah, we've got a startup that has access to a ton of formulation data for, everything from like sunscreen to
beauty products, skincare,
et cetera.
Cobalt is another example, by the way. I don't know if you've heard of that one, but they're just using mining data to identify mineral deposits using AI. And I actually think it's an interesting lens is areas where the data is distributed, no one currently stores it, and then a startup can kind of come in, gather it, clean it up. I mean, think about like Even Up or some of these legal startups that this was all a distributed, like personal injury law was like the most fractured, crazy, and and annoying jingles that get in our heads from like late night local television commercials and stuff. And then now it's like, wow, maybe this can all be done with AI. And then, and Aaron from Box always makes the point that it's also like human workflows that are, or really, workflows that exist that are currently only done by people. For which there's no software, obviously is in a major opportunity.
Well, no question, Aaron at Box.net loves this because he has a commodity business, right, competing with a bunch of giants as a subscale player. And his dream is that all that data stored in Box can all of a sudden magically become structured and more useful, right, internalized, because it would be great for his business, right?
Well, he's got the data and he has great distribution.
But look, I agree. I mean, I think there are going to be exceptions. If you're a satellite company and like all of a sudden, or like have a huge data set, all of a sudden it gets more useful. I think there are for sure exceptions to this, but I would just be very cautious because that data better be truly proprietary. This idea that people are going to like take any sort of commodity data and do something that not every other person in the world can do. I think that's the thing. Is like it's just a tool that everyone can use, and there's no incumbent penalty.
But doesn't that leads to one of my questions, which is if everyone's going to do it, where's the value? So like
totally. Going to get competed to zero.
Especially, I mean, Sam and I were spending time over the weekend with people who were, building the big LLMs, right? Like the 4 frontier models, so to speak. And my kind of question is like, okay, if they all converge in their capabilities, which seems likely because they're trained on the same hardware, at some point, like you have enough data, then are we even missing this? Like what we just outlined is based on the idea that there will still be some differentiation. And I don't know, what do you guys think about that?
Between the LLMs themselves?
Come on, fifth wheel.
Yeah, between the LLMs themselves.
Well, I think that there's going to be differentiation in terms of the competitiveness of who uses who. I think you're going to start seeing, remember how there was a time where some companies that use AWS that competed with Amazon didn't want to use AWS, and they went to other cloud, and that sort of like helped drive Google Cloud and other things. I mean, don't you think it's going to be the same thing? I mean, think about these agents that are going to welcome us and personalize our experience across every website that we go to. They're the LLMs that are powering those are going to come from probably the big four that you just cited. And then, is that going to is it going to be like, oh, I work with this one, so my, Target works with one, so Walmart wants to work with another? Like, I wonder if that's one form of differentiation.
Well, the other thing that will start happening is exactly what happened with cloud, where everyone basically dangles carrots in front of each other, fatty contracts to move each other over. It's like a very zero-summy game. And the reality is anyone who's smart uses all of them, right? So they can trade them off each other and trade volumes off each other, et cetera. And I mean, the question is whether
this is a good point. These are just clouds, right?
Yeah.
Like, actually, this is the first time where this clicked for me. Like, that they're literally building clouds, right? Like, I mean, that's what they are building.
Unless one of them can do something that the others truly cannot, which I have a very hard time seeing how we end up in that world, right? Like, I think they're all going to be very good. And then, sure, some will specialize. There might be like, Adobe's cloud, which they'll certainly launch using their data and their tool to be slightly better at certain stuff. You'll use that API, whatever. But I just think this stuff is all the core stuff will be all very commodity, whether it's decentralized or not. And commodity things end up getting competed mostly to zero.
I mean,
right?
I think the interesting language that you're using, Sam, is will be. I think they already are, right? Like, every founder I know that's working in this realm almost on a daily basis asks me, which one should I use for this or this? And everyone's using GPT and Anthropic. I mean, everyone's already doing this. So like, that future is already here.
Well,
like, it's already commodity.
The only counter to that I will say is, like, for instance, the information is heavily using OpenAI right now and GPT stuff for some very cool projects. And the interesting differentiation there is actually developer experience and ease of use, right now, right? Which is like, it's kind of annoying to use some of these other things. You have to talk to humans, like things like that. And GPT is OpenAI is the only company that kind of Twilio style, you really can just like click with really basic APIs and get
What kind of
stuff.
an AI company are you if you have to talk to humans?
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Is there a network effect in terms of the improvement of the LLMs from all of the people that are using it?
I think
they're better fucking not be. Like, that's all I'm saying.
They say they're not.
They say they're not using the, I mean, that if they are, then we have to stop using them.
But like, Sam, that's like saying, oh, you're Facebook and you're not going to use the data for targeting.
Oh, look,
like, there's no way that doesn't happen over time.
Maybe
it's too appetizing. The data asset is too, like, the centralization of that much data of that much value, like, you cannot keep your hands off of it.
I agree, except for the fact they've been swearing up and down that they're not doing that. And the fact is that because there really are B2B businesses, unlike Facebook, which is B2C, I think if they say that, they have to believe it, because otherwise they're going to get their pantsuit off by a lot of robo-lawyers.
Two quick thoughts.
The AI lawyers. When the AI lawyers sue the LLMs.
Well, regulation is coming way faster than these guys thought. I mean, guys, ChatGPT is not a year old. It's not a year old. I mean, that's crazy, right? And I think, obviously the regulatory stuff would follow fast, but it's following fast. And so that's one thing. The other thing about the cloud analogy, which I think makes sense, but you didn't see the providers buying equity stakes in these companies in the cloud wars, right? So Walmart
they should have been.
Walmart didn't want to use Amazon's cloud and became Microsoft's biggest customer. We actually have an awesome database on the information for our pro subscribers where we track cloud spending on platforms of these guys, and it is kind of awesome. But, the other big Amazon news of the week was a huge investment in Anthropic, up to $1.5 billion. Google is the largest shareholder of Anthropic. I'm curious what you got. When I saw that, I was like, Google must be pissed. But maybe this is just happening faster and everyone's already realizing that you'll have these kind of federations, but to not just like have multiple customers across competing providers, but now your two largest shareholders are Google and Amazon.
Didn't they do something weird with Snap along these lines, though, in some cloud deal?
Yeah, I mean, Snap scaled almost entirely on Google.
Yeah, but did Google invest in Snap? That's a good question, Sam. I don't know if they invested.
Well, Facebook, Microsoft definitely invested in Facebook as part of an ads overall deal.
Yeah, so and then we definitely invested in Facebook platform apps, for a minute in the beginning as well.
Yeah, it's not brand new, but it's happening at a huge scale. I mean, the Microsoft deal with OpenAI kicked it off. But I wouldn't be surprised if OpenAI raises money from literally anyone at this point. I mean, Google would probably surprise me a little bit, but it just seems like the capital needs are so great that they're playing like a different game in terms of
the good news is this era versus former, everyone's got a lot of money, right? Like, which is fun, right? Like, it's like, Microsoft can write OpenAI in theory $10 billion check, and it's like, what, not even 1% of their market cap, right? So
this is why Masa is still flailing in the wind, because like nobody needs him yet. And that must drive him crazy. But
I want to know from Scott, who is Adobe planning to invest in?
Yes.
Which one are you going to pick for your pony?
Oh, I mean, listen, we're working with a number of these LLMs, and I think we've kind of come out publicly and said, hey, for all the creative models, we're going to build our own because we feel like we have the data sets and the experience on that. But on the LLM side, we're partnering with a number of these folks, and we are just kind of figuring out for what product, what LLM works best. I mean, one of the things we're trying to also figure out, and I think a lot of people are talking about, is this whole concept of agents. And I know, Dave, you and I've talked about this a little bit before, but I think we all recognize that we will want to have like a natural language experience across all the digital experiences we have, whether it's a website or whatever, and you may want to have a conversation. And of course, it's powered by an LLM. But that agent, I have a lot of questions as I kind of go down the rabbit hole there. Like, first of all, is that
what an agent is? Like, I was talking about this on the back channel. Like, everybody says this word agent as if like everyone understands what this word means. I have no idea what this word means.
Well, I think it's because a lot of people read 1980s science fiction. And so they have some conception of what like a pre-internet agent is from those of us that did that.
Yeah, I mean, we all read that, but like people are...
Okay, wait, hold on. A lot of women did not read 1980s science fiction. I just want to set that record straight.
You
Sam,
should.
I mean, Scott, describe agent in your definition.
Yeah, well, my view is that an agent is literally not only... in the pyramid of things, right? It can start by answering your questions, and it's a glorified help desk. But then going up the pyramid a little bit, it starts to proactively do things for you. Like it's a form of autocomplete. It's a form of like predictive whatever, depending on what program you're in, application you're in. And then at the top of the pyramid, it's actually proactively suggesting things that you didn't even know you wanted. Like you're literally doing a campaign for some marketing thing, and it's like actually try to make this change to make it perform better, or you're designing something and it's like, hey, actually red performs better than blue for what you're doing. I don't know, but it actually is more intelligent than you are to some degree and starts to advise you.
I see. So to play that back, what I'm hearing, so an agent is something that's kind of prompting for you. It's like taking whatever you might be doing on your screen or in the app that you're using and sort of proactively suggesting things to you rather than you having to write the prompt and put it in.
Well, can I just take the 1980s
Is that right?
spin on?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think that there's the levels of the pyramid I just described, but yes, that's one of the things the agent would do.
Well, there's a 1980s version of this, but I think is important to add on, which is like a pre-web version of how people thought about these things, which was effectively like an agent was like a digital twin that went out in the world and negotiated for you, right? So before the public web existed, before the internet existed, there was an alternative model of how effectively computers and the network would work, where basically imagine you generate a digital twin that's like local to your machine or local to you, and its only job is to work for you. Everyone else
its only job is to come up with jokes to come back at Sam on the podcast.
I mean, sure. And my thing would come up with we would come up with witty responses to your jokes. So basically imagine a world where like instead of standardized APIs where you, Sam, go and use what Adobe has and someone's like your little side helper giving you it's actually like, no. Like you're like, hey, I need to book a ticket, and some agent working on your behalf goes out to the world and looks at all the services and negotiates with everyone for the best rate.
So like you could have an agent that goes out on dates on your behalf and all kinds of things.
Absolutely. I actually think dating is a great example of this. Imagine a world where rather than Tinder, where you text with something, you're like, listen, here's who I am, da-da-da. The other people are like, here's who we are. They go out and negotiate with each other and talk to each other and whatever, and they report back when they have a good answer.
Bumble is already starting to do this, by the way. So props to Whitney. Bumble. Whitney over there is starting to work.
Wait, what are they doing, Brett?
We're both right then. And I think the point we're making here is that a company can have an agent and a person can have an agent, right? So the company's agent is doing what I just described. The person's agent is doing what Sam's describing. And I also think, by the way, there's a world in which they interact with each other without
100%. They're negotiating with each other, right? And then the question is, who's dealing the people agents, right? Someone's going to be the dealer of people agents.
And herein we understand why everybody's worried about war breaking out.
Yes.
Well, this is Apple's version is clearly on device, as it always is, and your phone, negotiating with the world. But it's like, imagine a world where instead of standard APIs, companies just had an agent, and your agent would walk up and be like, hey, what services do you provide? And like they'd be like, well, and the agents could talk at super high speed back and forth and negotiate a variety of services.
In massive
Why
parallel.
is this better? Like, what are we trying? I mean, to step back, the last generation of this, Siri, Alexa, etc., has not exactly taken the world by storm.
That's just interface bullshit, though. Like, I think the difference is like the Siri. That's all that is like like answering dumb questions for you they get from the internet, right? And having a voice front end, right? What an agent model of the world would be is like, let's say you're like, hey, agent, my agent, I want to go to New York tomorrow. And it like knows every preference, my seating preference, whatever. It would come back and be like, okay, I'm going to ping Wheels Up. I'm going to ping Kayak. I'm going to ping everyone and say, hey, Sam wants to go to New York. What do you got for me? And it can in parallel negotiate with all of them. It might come back and be like, hey, Sam, guess what? Scott's flying to New York. And as the chief strategy officer of Adobe, he's got a plane. Right? Let's hop on his plane for free, right?
Can I just wait? First of all, I love that you use Wheels Up still, Sam. Secondly,
we do not use Wheels Up. Oh my God. Please. But also, Sam, you built a whole business that decided that people were needed for this and technology couldn't do it. So explain to us. Oh, yes.
It's funny. I started a company called Fin, right, which was trying to do this a decade ago. And it was actually technically the Fin Exploration Company. And Cortina, my co-founder, actually had me. Yeah, isn't that almost? Had me pull up the charter from 2015 we wrote about this.
Artificial intelligence.
I'll share it. The charter was all about how we believed in the end there would be an AI solution, but it wasn't there yet. We wanted to get ahead and figure out how this all worked by putting people in the loop and then pairing them back. Hilariously, I now get pinged once a week by someone who's starting a Fin clone and says, now is the time it will finally work. And I'm like, I know where too many of the skeletons are buried. I don't think it is. But it is like, I do think that like there are aspects of what we did with Fin, right, where there were really magical service experiences, but they were expensive and hard to deliver that you could do better now. I'm still not sure it's a good company, but it is a good experience.
So let's do a quick flash poll. In terms of AI agents, are we all more in or less in terms of believing that that's a reality, like that this will happen
that
at the
coming?
level? Yeah.
More in.
100%.
The question is like what did you call it, Scott, on the back channel we had? The agent.
Oh yeah. So one comment, then the question that Britt's referring to. But I also think, by the way, agents are going to save us from all the concerns we have about AI. Because a lot of the concerns around AI,
AI isn't going to save us from AI. I don't believe
like all the stuff that the bad actors can do with AI to like use someone else's voice, like your grandmother, and get you to give money. Hopefully, your agent is on your behalf saying that's not real. Or so I'm saying, like, I think our personal
agent's like, don't give grandma money. Fuck grandma.
But here's the other issue about the bad agents is that everyone's building these. The companies are all building their agents, but they're being built at various levels. So their operating systems are coming out with agents, and Windows just announced like an operating system level Copilot. We also know that Edge has a Copilot, right? We also know that companies like Adobe and others are building Copilot or agents into their products. So what if you're like,
iOS 17 has it in the keyboard.
Right. You might have agent inception where you have like agents on top of agents on top of agents helping you.
So I will say, I think one of the interesting things you talk about AI agents being an important part of the future. Here's, I actually think, a different angle to get to the same place, which is what's really happening, I think, with a lot of this AI stuff is the public web is dead. people are not going to post shit publicly, right? Because why would you? Give away all the value, get nothing in return because the LLMs just ingest it, and like we're not even going to send you traffic back. Like the era of that trade is over. What that means is everyone goes behind walled gardens, right? So what that means is that rather than having a public web you can look at and navigate, instead you're going to have all these little pockets of walled gardens, and the only way that you're going to get to know what's in them is by having someone going and knocking on the front door and be like, excuse me, what services do you offer? Like, and because everything's going to hide, then you're going to need personal agents to go out to find what services even exist in a way that didn't happen in the last generation because everything could be more open. So imagine like everyone's in their bunkers now and like no one's going to share shit with each other. And you're going to need to have a digital twin or a double going out to even discover what services exist.
So how does trust and safety work?
What?
How does trust and safety work in an agent world? What's the difference between an agent and a bot? I mean,
well, like, a lot of the agents right now have what's called human in the loop. So they're like 80%, at least like I know one, I talked to a founder this morning whose platform is 80% human, 20% AI. But over the next 3 years, they expect it to flip to be like 80% AI, 20% human.
I already did this game. I already had a 20%. I already had a 20% AI, 80% thing a decade ago.
I was going to say, just like the self-driving cars have been closing that last 20% gap for the last 10 years.
All I'm saying though is there are currently for a lot of these agents still like human oversight or humans in the loop, helping them get tasks done for some of these platforms
because the AI doesn't work.
And how am I going to yeah, but it seems like maybe my head isn't screwed on today, but it seems like you guys are all saying very contradictory things. You're saying this is what the future is going to be like. It's going to be agents all the way down. You'll have an agent to be your personal assistant. You'll have an agent to help you with your job, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, like we've talked at length on the pod about the severe limitations, even of today's LLMs, right? Sam, you talked about how we use OpenAI, the information, and it's useful, but like you were just explaining to me, we're like, it's actually not that good yet. And so we have like jerry-rigged to like having to run it basically in two different ways to even get a result that's good enough because like running it in the way it's supposed to be run doesn't give us a good enough result. So like, what's the gap here? Is it time? Are we talking about horizons or like, what's the gap?
I want Scott to answer that first.
You made me think of the question that I have, which is like, what is the Prodigy or CompuServe of the AI era? And are we talking about companies right now that are doing it in a certain way that will, maybe there is a step function better way, in terms of both efficiency and quality and other factors I can't even think of that will really differentiate this stuff. I happen to believe, by the way, that a lot of AI powered things are going to be able to be run locally. And that, and also with less powerful models that, for good enough outcomes. And so I think there's a good debate that I've had with people that are way smarter than I that goes both ways. One is like, oh my gosh, you think H100s are good? Like wait until you see the next chip and the next chip and the next chip. And then the other half of the group is like, you're not going to need that for a lot of things you need to do.
Definitely not. But they both can be true.
Well, one point on that, it's just been a prolific week at the information, I must say. But another story we had is that Microsoft is developing its own Gen AI. So Microsoft, who's $10 billion into OpenAI, gave it exclusive access to their IP, has decided, in part because it's too expensive to run, they're going to build a cheaper, functional enough version to have to power some of these applications. I just think that supports exactly what you said, Scott, right? Is that like there will be like cost is going to be a huge factor. You'll be able
just
to
like
get
it would be with
enough.
cloud. I mean, I guess that is the place where cloud is a little bit.
Yeah.
It was a little bit different. Is like the thing that with cloud, everyone's got more or less the same class structure, right? It might be a little bit different, but it's not like dramatically different. I think some of these models we're talking about what happens with these generative AI clouds and the competition is it's totally reasonable that Microsoft could come up with, especially for specific applications, something that's 100 times cheaper, right? And like, why not for 1% of your market cap, not even lock up a competitor and then go build 100 times cheaper version? Like that just seems reasonable, right? Do both, right?
Especially if OpenAI is going to go raise money from Masa. But anyway.
Well, by the way, can someone at 90 billion, which I love how you get to 90 billion. So like who anchored on 100 and then someone's like, fine, but it's 90.
Wait, so will Sam Altman finally take equity is my question. He didn't take equity this whole time.
Because he's making bank so many other ways that like,
just
He's got carry through a bajillion different funds that he's fine.
He doesn't, yeah. And for those of you who haven't been following, it's that Sam has said very consistently, first broken by the information, Sam Altman, that he was not going to take equity in OpenAI, which you may remember was once a nonprofit, but that will be a book for another time.
That ship has sailed.
Sailed. In our remaining minutes, we must talk about the big antitrust kahuna, in part because I feel we may disagree on it. But Dave Morin, lay out the government's case about it against Amazon.
Well, I think that of all, like I was saying at the beginning, of all of the antitrust cases, to me, this is the one that is the most textbook, right? Like here you've got Amazon, I think in the most basic way, interfering with the market, releasing products to undercut the price of other products in their marketplace. They're effectively, harming consumer pricing through their actions, which is like,
but are they? I mean,
I think they are 100%.
What, you think there's the seller case, I think, doing things like you can't offer prices for less elsewhere.
Yeah.
Again,
and then
which
bundling into
stopped,
Prime,
yeah.
right? Like they do. There's like multi-step actions here, which are to me classic. Classic things that will draw antitrust scrutiny, right? And you can't make as clear of a cut of a case with any of the other big players. You can kind of split hairs and look at the other guys, but this one is like to me, it's like straight up the fairway, and they should drive it home.
12 years from now, when it comes to trial, Scott, what are your thoughts?
Oh my gosh, guys! I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV. Although I will say,
this is a podcast. This isn't a TV.
This is a podcast.
This is a no fact zone, as Sam said.
No, but I mean, get back to me when I have a view of how AI should transform government, but I will save that until we have time.
Okay, Britt, what do you think?
I as I said last week, I'm turning a corner. I'm now more pro-regulation. I just think like these big...
You're crazy.
Yeah. I just...
Who is my wife?
You live in Mill Valley. How
I want to mix shit up. I'm bored. I want to mix it up. I want to break up all these big tech companies. I think it creates more access for earlier startups.
But you want to break up the tech companies by investing, like giving more power to the Leviathan?
Okay, but I was also the one who came on. I came on this podcast a few episodes ago and talked about how shitty Amazon's become, and it's like all Chinese bullshit. I don't know. Amazon deserves like a lot of scrutiny right now on a bunch of levels, and I do agree with Dave. Like, this doesn't make, like, they do have so many product lines on their own platform. They're undercutting other people. They put a lot of sellers out of business. And like, maybe I'm just rooting for the little man here. And a lot of these independent sellers.
Little person.
It's a classic. I mean, it really is the clash of the mom and pop versus the consumer. There's no way you can argue that consumers are worse off because of Amazon. You just can't.
Yeah.
You can't even squint and see it. Like,
can we just talk about Walmart for a second?
I don't know. I think you can, Jess.
Yeah, they're getting duped by all these Chinese sellers on Amazon that send you shitty quality products. But
that's not an antitrust issue, right? Like, the antitrust law is actually fairly specific. I mean, a lot of people want to reform it, right? But it's very it hasn't been reformed. So the
consumer side is an antitrust issue, right?
It is, but it's also like consumer harm is defined in a certain way by the laws, right? And it's not defined as like, I can't get, I mean, I've ordered 3 things for like less than I would ever have imagined today from Amazon that I need quickly, and I'm going to get them. And so do I think that some of their practices are unfair to sellers? Absolutely. But I'm just trying to like look ahead to what the outcome is going to be here. And I think the government has a tall order, and it has it on all of these things. And they're all separate cases, but look at the FTC had to resue Meta because it screwed up on the first lawsuit it did. And who knows like where that one's going. The DOJ Google case, it's hard to know how it's going. I think the DOJ will land some blows, but it's not going to be earth-shattering. I mean, I think this case is a big deal. I don't want to downplay it, but because Amazon deserves the scrutiny. But I'm struck, like, they redefined the market of online internet because, again, if you define it as online internet, they have not minuscule share, but, smaller share. So they define the market of online mega superstores or whatever. And whenever you see the government making up new terms for market definition, you're kind of like, oh. So anyway, that's
can I bring it back to AI, and then maybe Scott can have the final word on government and regular AI, which is, I actually think what's interesting in terms of paradigm shifts is like the reason Amazon is in such a dominant place is because their website has always loaded super fast and they deliver the things they say they're going to deliver. And so we've all decided that when we buy things, we're just going to go to Amazon. Like one of the only places we actually search Amazon versus Google, for instance, is because like Amazon. Now, in our little agent future, where little mini Sam goes out and crawls across the hidden internet because everything's gone completely private because crawling has been destroyed, like all of a sudden, it doesn't matter. It's going to go to all the places, right, to find like whatever the best product is and open it up. And so I do think that it's a long time coming. We're not there yet. We still need the public web to collapse because of AI. There's several steps to play out. But when you look in 10 or 15 years in the future, I think a lot of this stuff will become less relevant because little mini AI Sam, agent Sam looking for things and talking to all the other agents doesn't need to go to Amazon.com. It can be way more creative in terms of where it looks.
I mean, that's a fascinating thought. I mean, the whole idea of the interface layer fight, that it's always been like the story of technology is whatever interface is on top. It's like a game of slap a hand, and the winning hand on top is sort of like wins. I remember thinking when Alexa started to become more popular, if I said to Alexa, order me a car, and it just had a car show up, I would start to be agnostic as to whether it was Uber or some of those other companies that are struggling these days. But, to your point, maybe there's a world in which your agent, needs to find the product, and maybe it's the actual manufacturer at that point that works with some 3PL and realizes they can totally cut out the middleman, aka the Amazon in this case, to be able to get you what you want at even a better cost. Like, who knows? I mean,
but Amazon still has the delivery infrastructure. Well, so in that example,
but the basic point is you can imagine a little, I'm like some creator of things. I put out my agent and I can talk to all the agents being, I have this for sale, this for sale. Yeah, I got to warehouse it. Yeah, there are steps and there's things like that. But like that actually blows away most of Amazon's advantage, right? Because all of a sudden from a multiplexing perspective, like the idea of being a website people go to and trust becomes completely irrelevant.
It's a big blow, but I order from Amazon because it's showing up tomorrow, not actually because the website loads fast.
Yeah, but if you go to a world where that's true, and for your toilet paper, maybe they still keep your toilet paper business because they cache it super close. But like that's not the important part of their business, right?
Yeah,
like,
and that's only available in the big metros. It's not. Yeah. That's not reality for the rest of the country.
So Scott, can you end on? I want to hear you teased us with your government vision.
I think I was just we were talking earlier about great opportunities for AI to on the startup side of things, and thinking about very workflow, very disorganized and labor intensive and big sort of maybe overstaffed organizations, and of course like government came to mind. There's so much that happens. Just go to the DMV or file your taxes or everything else in between, and you see what I'm talking about. And I just wonder, government talks a lot about their thoughts on AI, but has government actually talked about what they're doing with AI? Has government recognized the need to refactor itself? Are there startups and technologies that are focusing on this? To me, that's probably one of the biggest TAMs in the world is government spending and refactoring a lot of these operations.
The military is thinking about it.
Yeah, I think the military is thinking about it. I mean, remember, we also had, it's really been an AI week, guys. Writer's strike ended with some concessions on AI, but essentially the studios can use AI broadly for experimentation, but there's still going to be a person, a writer attached in name. But if the prospect of any of this ground Hollywood to a halt for 5 months, I can only imagine what it would do to the United States government. But it's a great point, Scott. Someone should start a company there. They should come to Scott for funding.
Do they have data and distribution or not?
Yes, the government has both.
Or offline, and the good news is that there's distribution and data. I mean, I
can't wait. I can't wait to see how royally the DMV fucks up AI. It's going to be comical. It's going to be like they're going to find a way to make it the worst possible experience, and it's going to be really fun.
You just want to buy the DMV, Sam. This has been a long held dream.
Put the DMV and the TSA on it.
The most broken bot in history, and no one's going to get licenses. It's going to have to send you in circles.
Guys, we're going to be doing tech support for the rest of our lives. Mr. Belsky, thanks for joining us. You made us smarter. You brought some facts and perspective to the convo. So a huge thank you to you. And
the fifth wheel.
Fifth wheel is going on my LinkedIn right now.
The guts you get, Britt, for singing on national television. This is national television.
Yeah. I didn't even do.
No, you said it's not TV.
Wait, Britt, do it in Britney
Okay, ready?
Spears'
Here's
voice.
the Britney Spears. The fifth wheel.
All right, now you get. Wow, you really went for that
You're
one.
welcome, everyone.
Britt's amazing. Also amazing. Our friends in the back channel who keep us smart and give us good ideas. And we actually have an IRL gathering soon, which we're very excited about. Thank you to everybody listening, sharing. Our pod is growing, which is so exciting. Brings us a lot. I was going to say joy. That might be an overstatement, but we're super satisfied to be able to be useful to you guys. So
it brings my agent joy.
Send us
my
feedback.
Agent tells me it's joyful.
My agent to combat Sam is coming soon.
Have your agents write us 5-star reviews. Share this with your friends. Spread the word, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great one.
Later,
Bye,
everyone.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.